Greetings YouTube. This is going to be a bit of a deep dive into how to modify and install a high line stereo system, Loom, for an Android media player into a low or mid line Discovery 4. But a lot of the things that I'll be talking about might be interesting or applicable to other models and stereo lines that you might be installing. So as you can see here, this is the final result. It works, it's great, I love it. Probably going to convert one of my other cars as Range Rover as well. It does way more than I thought it would, and it's a lot more configurable than I thought it would, and it also has a lot better CAN integration. So like all the steering wheel buttons work. It's, you know, has all the front and rear reversing sensors. I'll be hooking it up with a reversing camera. But as it turns out, after doing this, I did some more searching online, and I did find on AliExpress a Loom that looks like it might be compatible with the low line and mid line cars, because I think that, which is not so common. And here it is. This is the listing here, and I'll put a link in the description. It's actually, the seller is Skyfame, so it is their main store, and they're one of the main makers of these looms. And there's a few different options in this listing for like the high line and the low line and the mid line. So you just need to click on the little like option color thumbnails to pick the one that says like low line AB, and that's what this one looks like. Now this would be useful even if you wanted to just salvage some parts off of it, potentially to make a high line Loom plug and play, so you didn't have to like go to the work that you'll see in this video of cutting and soldering the high line Loom to work. Just as a side note, before I go any further there, if you want to skip right to the end or near the end, there is a bit of a review process and demo of the unit in action. So back with this thumbnail that I'm showing you, you can see the two grey plugs, and you can see how they've got all the grey wires present. So that's your speaker wires, and that would be handy to have one, because you could, like I said, you could use that to modify a highline Loom if this Loom that I'm showing you here doesn't work. I think it might. I think the decoder is the same. It looks like it's got the right plugs. You see the plug up to the top right hand corner. There's like a 3D side angled version and then a front on version. That's the same plug. That's the one that I believe it is missing from my highline Loom, which plugs into the LCD connector of the low and midline Looms, and that's where you get like your CAN and steering control connectors wires from. Though these Looms are not enough, potentially. There's particularly in the highline ones, they're missing the MOS converters, I believe, that you would need to convert back to optical. And that's what this blue box looks like. So this what I've just Googled online, looks the closest to what my Loom looked like, even though mine actually came with a whole bunch of different accessories. Most of them I didn't need, but I just picked this photo out because it shows the way that this blue box plugs into the RCA connectors, which you'll see later in my explanation. And that's what converts back to the fiber optic for the highline connector down to the amplifier. I might just also mention how to quickly differentiate between a high line, midline, and low line. So the easiest thing to tell is if you've got a touchscreen or not. This is talking about the Discovery 4, but if you've got a touchscreen, then you've got a high line, as far as I can tell. That means you've got a fiber optic cable which goes between the head unit down to your amplifier, which is under the driver's seat. If you've got the small screen LCD that does not have any touch capability and has two little physical buttons off to the right hand side, that's the low or midline screen that's in the earlier discoveries. And then if you've got that screen, you might have a low or a midline. So the low line and the midline, you can tell the difference if you've got an amplifier under your driver's seat. That also comes with a phone integration. So probably if you've got Bluetooth connectivity, you've probably got a midline. With that being said, I will now continue with the rest of this presentation.
And it isn't a plug and play for the low or midline Discovery 4. It's really aimed at the touchscreen versions, whereas I've got the early one that's not the touchscreen, but they're still basically the same wiring. The plugs are just a little bit different. So I'll run you through that. But first, I just wanted to go over this Loom before I chop it up. Well, make some modifications. I don't need to do much. Basically, we've got this is the most important thing. This is the CAN bus decoder, and I've actually have decoded or translated the Chinese characters on it, which say it's for like Range Rover 2005 to 2013 and Discovery 2004 to 2009, which you might think, oh, like when I translated that, I was like, oh no, like this is not going to work on Discovery 4, but they mustn't have changed things that much in terms of the needs for this, so it still works in Discovery 4, because this label here, which I translated, which was actually stuck around here, one of these areas, this actually says Discovery 4, so it must work. Now, this basically, allows the head unit to receive all the messages from like the car, and then things like, for example, the parking sensors, which is what I believe this speaker is for. The other interesting thing with this Loom is that it has this like impedance converter and the RCA outputs. What that's for is all the Highline radio units don't actually have. They use like a optical fiber link to go from the head unit to the amplifier. And so the idea here is that it's taking I think it's just like the front left and front right channels from the head unit, which is plugged in up here, converting them through this impedance converter. And then there's another unit that normally comes with this, but I don't have it. So I didn't need it. It's a blue box, and that converts it back from the RCA to the optical, which I think is like the MOST network, MOST. So, but for the midline and the low lines, they actually don't use the fiber optic. So for this Loom, the guy who sold it to me pointed out that we just actually have to cut out the four channels, the four speaker channel wires, which are all there, which are, I'll share the standard wiring for this sort of head unit plug. And that's the four channels there. I just need to cut them out and then wire them into the factory Loom, because in mine it would be like on this grey plug, but I don't have all the pins to connect that to here, so I'm just going to have to sort of bypass that. The other interesting thing is with the subwoofer, there's no output in this Loom for a subwoofer, and nor in the factory connector or head unit. The subwoofer seems to be driven directly from the amp, so I'm not sure. Maybe there's no control over the subwoofer, because I don't think there's any sort of data connection, like CAN connection between the car and the amplifier. I think the amplifier is just like sort of a dumb unit. The other parts of this Loom are this white wire, which is the CAN. Sorry, I got to move this into this field. This white wire, which is the CAN connection from the decoder to the head unit. So this is translating the CAN signals from the car to the messages that would be understood by the head unit. That's that white one that goes on the back of the head unit. And I've mentioned the parking speakers. This is the multiplier that goes up to the head unit. You've got this little interesting one here, which what that is, I traced the wires through the loom, and they actually just go up to here. And according to my pin layouts for this, we've got a little sort of creamy pink, orangey sort of coloured one. That's part of a remote signal wire, and then that pairs with a blue and white one, I think. And this is where I got confused. If you look up this and the remote that they're talking about, and the steering wheel key remotes, what I'm talking about, the steering wheel controls, are for like an Android based one, like a standalone key button system, which I think would be sold separately and plug into this. Not necessarily the one that's already in your steering wheel on the Land Rover. Though I think technically, apparently, the head units, even if potentially this could work for any buttons, steering wheel control, potentially, because it can actually learn. Apparently it can learn. You can sort of like hook this up to your buttons, and then like press a button, and then it'll get the code, or the signal, and then you can assign a function to it. But I don't think that's necessarily a part of it, because in both of these main other ends of the plugs, I've worked out what all these wires are, and there's a pink and black pair in both of these here and here that correlates to the steering wheel controls in the Land Rover Looms. And so that's really the way I was able to sort of work out what all this does, is by, this is pretty standard. You can look up more or less what all those colors and wires are. And then looking through various electrical diagram, service manuals and stuff, I was able to work out what connector numbers these are, and therefore, in the wiring diagrams, what the different wires are, because the colors are different on this, obviously, because this is just like, not Land Rover. And then there's no documentation that I can find for what the pinout on this decoder is. So, and obviously, the other thing that really confused me is that this loom has actually been made to be compatible with different head units, because I think, and that's what these Chinese symbols on here are, which I decoded, where this black one I think says Denso, and this one says PHD. There's actually two touchscreen versions, like there's a later one and then the older one, which is actually, and some of them are shared with the Range Rover, and that's how I was able to actually find some of what these plugs are, because I couldn't find a later model wiring diagram for the Discovery, but I could find it for the Range Rover Sport, and that's how I could find out what these wires are, because even though this connector, this C2819 does exist in the earlier Discovery, it's the wiring is not used, it's not used the same. And on this is the 2819, this goes to your display, and it has the main CAN signals from the car, and then it has the which is the green ones here, and then we've got the pink and black one, which is that's from the steering remote. So that's what I'm going to have to chop off, because that is completely different to what's on mine, the plug on mine, but it is still the same wire functions, even though the plug's different. And then you've got the two big chunky ones. These are the ones that go to the head unit, which is the head unit, you might think is the screen, but it's not. The head unit is actually like the CD player, which is actually the main stereo of the unit. And what we've got on these is, and this is the other thing, a lot of these actually just join together. They actually, I don't think the idea is to use both of these at the same time. They actually pair back up. So for example, here we've got the two green CAN lines again, and the remote, the steering wheel controls here again on this plug, but they actually just join up further down in the loom to here as well. So I think it's sort of like you can get it from here or you can get it from here. So, but apart from those two, the two greens and then the pink and the black, we've got a grey one in this one, which we don't have this one. I looked up this grey wire. That's actually a remote control. They call it a remote control line in the for the high lines, and I think that's there so that the head unit can actually control the relay for the power supply to the I think to the head units, and I'll show you that in the wiring diagram. That's not needed in mine because I haven't got the high line. And then over in the edge over here, we've got the yellow, which is your positive, and black is negative. And then they've both also got this orange and black one here, which is actually it can be called an antenna power supply or the amplifier power supply, because actually they both do the same thing. And that supplies power to, or triggers power to wake up the amplifier and the telephone unit. The other interesting thing, actually, while I'm talking about the telephone unit, is that so the low line unit doesn't have the telephone or the amplifier, and then you go to the mid line that has the amplifier and the telephone, and then you go to the high line and that has your touch screens. So, but the way the telephone unit works is it actually comes in through the auxiliary input on the head unit, and it shares it with the normal auxiliary in, and so where you plug your little 3.5mm head plug in, then goes to, if you've got the telephone unit, it goes to the telephone unit, and then from the telephone unit it goes to the head unit. And so what must happen is if you've got a phone call, the telephone unit must disconnect the signal coming from the plug, the outside, the 3.5mm plug, and just send the telephone signal when you're on the phone. And then when you get off the phone, it reverts back to the signal from the 3.5mm plug, which is in the back of the car. So I think that's about everything on this loom now. Like these are the connector numbers here that I worked out, 1354 and 2115. And now I'm going to start installing it. Here we are again. I just wanted to go over a couple of the plugs that I've got in the car before I cut a couple off and make modifications. I'll link a video in the description about how to pull this apart. It's actually pretty easy. I actually completely removed the CD player just to leave, so I've got heaps of room in behind here for storing all the loom and different plugs and stuff. It's really not needed. It's a dead weight. The only thing is you might be able to see like a little bit of gap through here, maybe, but we'll see what happens. I can possibly create a blanking, something to sit behind there and blank that off, but that's not pretty minor. I'll show you a photo of what this looked like before. The type of head unit this was is the low midline head unit, but this is the midline system because it's got the amplifier under the seat and the telephone connectivity. So we've got this big grey plug here, this is the main one here. This I've identified as C2115, and that is where all all those green ones are, all the speaker signal wires, and that's the ones that I'm going to have to cut out of here. I mean, I'd like to not have to, but I can't bother waiting for another plug and wiring loom, so I would just cut them all off and then connect them into the head unit direct. Then we've got a pair of CAN wires here, these two here. These you don't need because they actually, it's just a CAN connection between the head unit and the screen. So that's not the ones you need to tap into. We've also got obviously like power there, red and black, and that's almost it. I think there's like another one little wire, another little wire on the back, a little green wire. I might actually look up what that is and get back to you.
So I've looked it up. This little green wire on the midline grey plug is actually, the antenna power and AM/FM antenna power line, which is used to activate the amplifier. In the diagrams, it's shown as blue, but it's actually green here on this plug. Also, so it will need actually changing to connect to a different pin in the Loom, which I'll show you later.
And then we've got, this is the main one I have to chop into. This is the one that went to the display, and it's got this twisted CAN pair here. This is the one that there's actually two here, sorry. So one is the one that comes over to here, okay, between the head unit and the display, and then the other pair is the one that comes from the car. So I do have that identified. I'll show you in the wiring diagrams which one that is, judging by the pin numbering, which is going to be a little bit hard for me to work out actually, because I need to get to the back of that plug and see which wire comes from where. But we've also got these two sort of grey ones in here. They are they're the ones that come from the steering controls, the buttons on the steering controls, and then you've just got like a power supply. So basically I'll be chopping, a couple of those out of there and then wiring them into the plug that I showed you before, which is this one. Okay, we got the CAN wires here, and then the steering controls there. We've also, while I'm here, we've also got this, which is not needed anymore. That's from the touch panel, the button panel here, which once again that has the CAN pair 2, which is not needed, not used, because that actually is just as well the one that comes up to here and to here. It goes between those three devices, and then there's literally just like power. I think that's it. And we've also got in here, we've got that's the start-stop plug, which I'll be hooking back up later. And then the only other plug is this one here, which has just only the red and blue and black wires there. That's your auxiliary input line plug. So that's coming from the telephone unit, and then the 3.5mm input, which is on the back of the middle console. That's also not needed. It doesn't really serve any purpose anymore once we install this. And then we've got the antenna plug just here, which came off the back. So yeah, that's about it. I found out I've got the large touchscreen, which is going to come all the way down to here. Okay, so it looks like this cross member here is it's definitely in the way. I'm guessing there's no way it's actually part of this sort of whole frame. So I'm pretty sure I'm just going to have to cut through here and here. But before I do that, I'm going to try and wire it all up and get it working before actually making any irreversible changes. I think I'll probably also have to cut out that lower piece of plastic as well, those two bits, just through there and there. I think that's everything. Well, it works. First go. Quite impressed actually. I think I did a better job than the actual installer I bought it from. He told me I needed to hook in an ACC wire here, but there's no provision for that in the original Loom, or no need for it. He thought I should splice into it to power the unit up, but I figured that it must be able to work that out from the CAN network, considering that's not exposed in the big in the plugs that go into the car. And I was right. it will turn itself on and off automatically with the car. Just turn the stereo off. Sorry, the fan off for a minute. Basically, yeah, I've just rigged up this temporary wire here, which I think I'll actually do this permanently at that sort of length. So, because it's actually quite a good spot for it to sit, maybe if I'm servicing it or need to get it out and get to the back of it, I'll just, because you need a longer bit of wire to go up to here. So up here you've got, this is the, was that plug there, which was for the screen, which I've chopped off. I basically just chopped off both pairs and then used a multimeter to test continuity between the other place it's accessible, which would go into the head unit, and between the screen and the head unit. And when I found that the pair that was connected to here, I then used the other pair because I figured that must be the one that goes to the car. You could have probably also like wound back the covering tape and then seen which one goes where at the fork, but whatever. It's done now. And then I've also got the steering wires hooked up there, which I haven't tested yet, but maybe. Oh, yep, look, it works. There we go, volume up, volume down. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't think I'd have this much luck first off the bat. So I'm actually going to hook up the reversing camera as well too, which I've got. I just have to get a cable to run from the back of the car to the front of the car. Basically, you've got the green and black wires for the cam wires. The green and black, that's on pin 1 of this here. That goes to the yellow and blue, I believe. Let me just see. Pin 1, yeah, yellow and blue can wire. And then the flat green wire goes to the yellow and white. And then in terms of the key control, you've got the pink wire goes to the grey. I don't know if you better really see. It's just like there. So we've got the grey and red wire that goes to the pink line, and then the black line on this, which is just the ground, that goes to the it's grey and black. And I'll show you that on the diagrams as well. Time for a quick update. I've replaced the temporary wire, which I should have done this right from the beginning, because I think, as I said, it's better just to have a bit of extra length in the wire. So yeah, basically got a bit of Cat 5, spare Cat 5 solid core, but your multi-strand would probably work alright. Nice, good copper. And it's twisted pair as well, which is kind of cool for the CAN bus. So we've got, yeah, once again, CAN bus and the remote signals here coming up to the CAN bus, and the steering wheel buttons there. And I've already tested it and it works. So here I'll turn on. There we go. And then on the buttons on the steering wheel, volume up, volume down. Yep, good, still works. Alright, now onto the speaker wires. Alright, quick update. Just doing the speaker wires. So this is the end from the head unit, and this is basically, I've used the Cat 5 again. In hindsight, probably solid core is not the best. I mean, I'm getting there. It's just because it's more rigid than the multi-strand wire. It's a little bit tricky to twist them together neatly. And here's the finished result. I've got a larger piece of heat shrink cable to hold it all together nice and neat, and a strain relief for the cable tie. That, I believe, is meant to be the amplifier trigger wire, but it seems to go straight into the speaker connections in the back here, and I'm pretty sure this one over here is the antenna wire. Yeah, there we go. Got the demo song working. So yeah, I was right. This orange wire, on this plug it's orange, and then on this one it's orange black, but they're actually connected. That's the amp trigger wire, which in the Loom, that Chinese Loom, this is wrong. This is in the wrong spot. This is goes. These are all speaker wires across here on this version of the car. So what I've got is I just cut out. This is the front left, the first wire from close to the power. That's front left, and the solid color is the positive, and then the white lined one below it in the row underneath, that's the negative. And so I've got them up, just the front left speaker up here as a test, hook just temporarily wired up to make sure I've got the right speaker and everything. And yeah, so this wire, which was, I cut it a bit longer so that basically I could test it, and I just jammed it down into this little individual wire. It's here by itself, and all of a sudden the music actually started coming out, which wasn't until I put it in there. And that's got a positive 12 volts coming from the head unit, which is just like the trigger wire for the amplifier and the telephone. What I would probably do is I will just like cut that and then solder that onto there. Yeah, I thought about it'd be nice if we could just move that pin from there to here in this plug, but these end two on this end and then up this end are actually a wider plug, whereas all the middle ones, which is what you'd pull out of here, are like a smaller pin. Just double checking that I've got the right speaker going to the right wire before I solder it. I've just got it twisted up. So pattern is actually front left, rear left. Yeah, front right and then rear right. So now I'm just doing, I've done the front left, now I'm just doing the front right, rear left. And now to double check in this, you can jump in, have something playing and jump into the EQ, which is pretty cool. So we just click on here to go to the stereo, and then click down here. And then I think default it will come to this EQ screen. And we'll go to the zone, and then you can drag this little dot around. So that's full front left, full front, rear right, rear left. And so because I can hear that now still when it's coming out of the right speaker, I know I've got that wired up right. If I go right, rear, nothing, because that's not hooked up, which is good. And then front, right, also nothing, because I haven't got that hooked up back on the front left. The other really cool thing I noticed about this is you can actually toggle, looks like you can toggle the polarity or the phase of the speaker. And actually you can notice the difference, the actual sound difference. There's also this cool surround section where you can actually add, looks like you can add delay and distance to a speaker. So there's quite a lot of options in this system. I'm quite impressed. All right, update time. Got all the speakers connected. So you can see I've got them all there. I've added the strain relief cable tie. And also down here, that's the amp trigger wire going there. Cut it, it was down here. Hooked it into here, which is the wire that goes through to this orange one. Also, the other cool thing is I tested it before I started actually soldering. I actually did test the parking sensors because I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't sure if it would come out of the speaker and if I'd lose having the front and rear definition. But I'm pleased to announce that actually both of them work. So I actually disconnected the speaker because it's just going to be confusing, and don't need it. The beeping still seems to work just fine out of the factory speakers, and it even has this cool proximity display on the screen, which I'll show you once I do a live demo. Also, I might just mention that this model I've got here is 4G and Wi-Fi model. The model on the back is LFDW TS18 QLED 2025-09, so it's pretty recent. I'm happy about that. And I think TS18 is the main sort of model. If you Google that, you find various versions of this that have that. You can see where I've got the CAN line plugged in, and then it's got like the antenna connections over here, 4G and Wi-Fi, which I'll hook up before I put it all in. And there's also like a USB plug which goes in here, and the camera. So yeah, I've got to actually order that cable. Also, I cut off the RCA converter because that's just not needed and it's just going to get in the way. That was hooked in here. Time for a quick update. I've just used a rotary tool to chop off these two bits here. There's one bit like there, and then a lower bit just like that. Is down there. That's made enough room for all the heat sink and everything on the back. Another little thing I noticed, even if you're not using the reversing camera, you want to have the plug in there, because these two little things are your antenna apparently for the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi. Now, to get these little clips which have come off of this on, I've actually had to chop the little stands a little bit shorter. You can see.
Actually, instead of cutting these shorter, what I would recommend doing is using a Dremel or rotary tool to actually just grind out that square hole, the end of it a little bit closer to the end of the plastic prong, so that you're not actually making the overall length of these connectors shorter.
Here's the piece with the clips on it. And what's good is, even with this mounted in here, with the two side pillar pieces off, there's still plenty of access to get in the back here. So if I need to change a plug or something, or when I get the reversing camera, and I can also feed the wires down, maybe down into the glove box I was thinking, or behind the glove box for the USB and the SIM card. So I decided just to run all the cables. I pulled the head unit back out, plugged all the plugs back on. I got the SIM card holder, 2 USBs, the 4G and the Wi-Fi, and I'll just cable tie them up out of the way, and then they'll be much more accessible. And I've got the antenna, FM antenna plugged on in here. That has a special adapter there. And then I've got the reversing camera ready when I run that. Just going to show you how I've run this GPS antenna. So I've got it just here ready to stick on, and then I've tucked the wire in down the side here like this. Okay, it's here, and I've gone behind this little bit of trim. Just in here, there's a little hole, and you can go up through that corner and come out in here, a little gap. Okay, and then we're going to go up through there, up to the head unit. So I'm just putting these side trims back on, and worked out that you've actually got to put this outside trim that comes with the head unit on last. So I had to take it back off again, and it helps just if you squeeze the little clips from behind with your fingers to release it. Now the trick is here, we have been having a lot of trouble. I've worked out why. Getting these back on, you've basically got to start at the top. You put the top in first, and then where you can get in trouble is down here. I'll just take this completely out of the way. I think it's actually this edge in here that wants to try and go into that little hole and get jammed. You've got to get that under. That can want to jump, sort of slot into there, and that's not where it's got to go, and actually it just jams. It's actually got to come under here and slide in, and you've sort of got to put a bit of an angle there. So I've got it, and I'll just try and get the video in right where it needs to go. You see there, I've got it under that bit, not on top. it wants to try and go through that little gap on top, and it just jams it up. And now the moment we've all been waiting for. Ta-da! Yeah, I got it in. I just had, there was sort of like a little, got to get the right angle to clip this in, and then just push quite hard on here and here. Okay, there we go. Alright, I just want to show you a couple of cool things here. You got the radio going, got Bluetooth paired. But one really cool thing for Land Rover is, and I was not expecting this, is it actually has the 4x4 information screen, which for a lot of people, they may not want to actually get rid of the original touchscreen for losing that. It's not really that useful, but it's kind of neat. But anyway, it looks like you actually get it as an app now, which is really neat. It shows you your heights and, you know, your differential status. Plus it shows you if you're in a special mode, which I can see works if I toggle into grass, gravel and snow down here. So it's actually got 2 Bluetooth chips. So it can actually even get the internet over the Bluetooth, so that you don't really even need, maybe you don't even need a SIM card or Wi-Fi. You can just have your Bluetooth share its internet to the device when you've got, because you're always going to probably have your phone nearby. You know, you could have a diagnostics tool like a Gap tool, and you could install the Gap app on here and actually have it paired to that and access it through this screen rather than your phone, which is kind of pretty neat. Oh, I completely forgot to show you the parking sensors. So yeah, they're working. Let me just turn this down and put it in reverse. So there we go. Got this really cool display which shows the distance, and I've got the original beeping from the speakers, which I can hear in the back at the moment, and the front, I tested the front sensors. Front sensors work as well. And also up the top there is where it would show the reversing video once I get that camera hooked up. So this can be either Android Auto or CarPlay, where it kind of mirrors the apps and phones and processing and positioning data off your phone. Or it can be completely standalone, and you can actually install apps off the Play Store. So it's got a bunch of already on here. Here's the steering wheel control configurations, where you can configure what the steering wheel buttons do, which I've tested them all and they do work. And you've got like even this cool GPS status thing for testing your GPS out, getting a really good position, waypointing, that sort of thing. I mean, this is like amazing, really. I got to say, like, I'm very, very impressed. You know, like, you don't know what you're going to get with some Chinese products, but it seems like with this one I'm looking at here, I'd say they're leading the industry. Like, you can't get this quality or size just like, you know, like off the, I guess because they're so specific for each car, most retailers don't want to get into it, but because it's not high volume. But yeah, and this is obviously really finished, you know, like really refined, because I mean, this car's like been out for like 15 years plus the Discovery 3 before that, which is not that dissimilar, and Range Rovers. So it seems like they've really honed the CAN bus integration, and you know, like the sound is really good quality, and just the custom interface, the custom here that they run on the Android tablet essentially, it seems really great. I haven't found any problems with it yet. We've got the radio, like I said, scans, you know, yeah, got the outside temperature up here. Got the car battery voltage, which is super handy. That's really nice. It will shut itself down at a set voltage if the voltage gets too low. Yeah, that's like the speed, and then we've got a clock here. You can configure these buttons up the top to open whatever app you want, whether it's standalone Google Maps or, you know, or the Android Auto app. They've got an APK installer actually for sort of side loading apps, which is kind of cool. So you don't have to actually use the Play Store. It's got Google Voice, so if I actually press the button on the steering wheel, which used to be on my Range Rover, has like voice recognition, kind of really basic voice. I want to install like the topographical maps. There's some really good apps that will give you high detail, like basically paper maps for hiking, but on here, which will make it great for going off-roading. Also like digital scanner apps for like listening to emergency services. So if you swipe to the side, there's another sort of menu, basic menu, but there's a theme button here as well as Chrome. But in here, when you connect to the internet, which I'm now on the Wi-Fi, there's all these like different pre-made themes, like home screens and stuff. And if you go into the settings here, you've got this plugin section. This is where you can change, like, you know, it also works with the lights. So if I turn the lights on and off, it dims the screen automatically through the CAN bus, which is great because that was another thing I was worried about, it being too bright at night. And you got the car speed can come from the GPS, or it can come from the CAN bus. So, you know, it's handy to actually have the accurate GPS speed, because the car one is often out deliberately. So this way you can have both and compare. And this is just a radio now, and it's honestly, it sounds like almost, it's a bit tinny, but almost as good as CD. And you barely need any volume on this because it's getting amplified through the car amplifier. So there we go, you see that dim? Oh, and look, the little lights on the car actually come on. That's cool. That's when I turn the lights on. And it seems to have like a fast boot option where it sort of stays in standby. You can see that's really fast. Whereas there's times I've seen once it's had the power disconnected where it takes longer and it'll say Android. And so I think it goes into a deep sleep. There's a setting somewhere where it can go into a deep sleep after like a day of not being used to conserve battery. And I'll give you guys an update when I get the reversing camera hooked up and after I've been using it for like a few weeks.